Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be building an image gallery where we're going to be displaying 10 images in the form of a grid, and we're going to be using the Unsplash image API. So we're going to be getting the big image which we're going to display inside an article with a background color of white and with a very slight box shadow. We're going to be displaying the number of likes on the image as well as the Instagram account linked to the person who uploaded that image to Unsplash. And then we're going to have their profile image, their name, and the date when it was uploaded. So it's a small project with some bits of functionality here and there, and we're going to be using the Unsplash API, which means you're going to have to go into unsplash.com and you're going to have to create an account with them so that you can get access to an API key which you can use to send GET requests. So if you don't have an account with Unsplash, then you can go into unsplash.com and you can create an account with them, and then you should see this login screen. And then once you log in, then you can go into developers/API right here, and then once you go to this page, then you have access to your apps and the documentation. So I just want to open the documentation on a new page, and then I want to open my apps right here because you'll need to create an application. So the test application right here that I was using is called image gallery. So I'm going to create a new application for this. So new application, and then I'm going to accept these terms right here, and then I'm going to say accept terms. And then for this one, I'm just going to call this image gallery 2. And then I'm going to say an image gallery created using create React app. And then I'm going to say create application. So once your application is created, then you're going to have access to two things. You're going to have an access key, and then you're going to have a secret key. So the thing that we really need here is the access key, because this is what we're going to be using to send GET requests. Now, if you go into the documentation right here, then we can go into getting a list of photos right here, list photos, and you can see that the GET request goes into /photos, right? And this is an example of the GET request that we're going to be sending. So I'm just going to grab this and I'm going to say, go to this link. And then at the end of this, I'm going to go ahead into this page and I'm going to copy my access key. So just copy to clipboard, and then I'm going to append it at the end of this request. And then when I append it, then it should return something, but it doesn't because I need to add here client underscore ID equals, and then now we should get a list of photos. There we go. So this is the example request that we're going to be sending, but we're going to be hiding our API key inside a .env file, which we're going to create and then add it to our gitignore so that it is not committed to GitHub when we are committing it to GitHub. So the repository that we're going to be using is called Unsplash Image Gallery. You can go ahead and click the link in the description, or you can go into my GitHub profile. Once again, the repository is called Unsplash Image Gallery, and it has 3 L's that I'm just realizing now, but anyway. So you can go ahead into this green button and you can say copy this link, and then I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code, and then I'm going to clone this repository. So inside Visual Studio Code, which is a new instance of VS Code, then I'm going to open up my terminal using Ctrl and J, and then I'm going to cd into my desktop into a folder called fm-challenges that I have on my desktop. And then I'm going to say git clone, and then I'm going to paste in this link, which is going to create this folder for me. And then once it creates that folder, I'm going to say cd into unsplash-image-gallery with 3 L's because I misspelled it. And then I'm going to open up a new instance of VS Code by saying code dot. Okay, so the new instance opens up here, so I can close this down and then I can paste this to a full screen. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean a few files because this is the complete project, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the app.css, I'm going to delete the app.js, the article, the get images, as well as the profile, the report with vitals, and the setup tests. So I'm just going to delete all of them. And then inside my app.js, if you click on this file, what you'll notice is that we have 2 components which you have just deleted, so I'm going to remove them as well. And then inside here I have set up React Router DOM, and the reason why I have React Router DOM set up is because I wanted the images, I wanted these images that when you click on them, it takes you into a separate inner image which shows you a bigger image and then the profile of the person and then more of the images that they have taken and uploaded into Unsplash. So that's why I have this right inside here. And you can go ahead and try to do this, try to implement it on your own. And I should mention that the / username here, if you check in the documentation of the API, then you can go into, so you can go into get a user's public profile, and the get request that you're now going to be sending is / users / username, and then append your API key at the end, just like we did right here. So that's how you would try to implement this. But for now, because we don't have this component, I'm just going to remove it, or let me just comment it out. And then right here, we're going to create this component. But for now, because it's going to give us an error because we don't have it right inside here, then I'm going to comment this out as well. And then on top of this, I'm just going to return an H1 that says hello world. And then once I do that, then I'm going to open up my terminal using Control and J. And then because we want to go into our package.json and install all these dependencies that we have, such as TailwindCSS, and we also need to install datefns, which is going to help us to format our dates, then we need to go inside here and say npm install. And then once this finishes running, then we're going to run npm start, which is going to run our development server on localhost 3000. So I'm going to let this finish running, and then we're going to continue. Okay, so once this finishes running, then we can go ahead and run npm start, which is going to spin up our dev server on localhost 3000. Okay, so to begin, we have a blank slate that just says hello world, and then now we can begin customizing everything. So in our index.css, I have the Tailwind components imported on top. I have all the images set to a max width of 100% so that they don't overflow outside of their container. And then we have a font family of this, which is the default font family that you have when you run npx create Reactor, with a fallback font of sans serif, with font smoothing set to anti-aliased and grayscale. And then I have a BG slate of 100, which is a very like a slight gray, like as you can see right here. It's not completely white. And then profile image height is set to 30 rem. We can remove this, actually we don't really need it. And then we can remove this as well, because this is one of the stylings for the internal pages that I wanted to have, but I don't have. So once we remove that, then we can save it. As you can see, it's just the, some very minimal styling. And then I'm going to save this. And then once I save this, then I'm going to go into app.js, and then you know what, I'm just going to remove, I'm just going to comment this and comment this and comment this and comment this and then comment this. And then now inside here, we're going to return a component. And you know what, let me just go outside of the comments. We're going to be returning a component here called getImages, which we're going to create right away. So inside the source folder, create a new file called getimages.js, like so. And then inside here, I'm going to say export default function getImages, and then we're going to return a fragment inside here that says fetch images component. And then we're going to save this, and then inside our app.js, we're going to import this on top. So right here, we're going to say import getImages from /getImages, and then when we save this, we should see hello world, and we should also see fetch images component. So let's go ahead and save this, and we have this. Okay, fantastic. So now that we can see fetch images component, then we can remove this because we no longer need it here. And then now what I want to do is I want to create a .env file, which is going to hold our API key, which we have right here. So I'm going to copy this API key. You can copy your own API key. So copy this, and then inside the root, I'm going to create a .env file. And then inside here, I'm going to create a variable called react_app_unsplash_API_key, which is going to be equal to this, right, our actual API key. And remember, when naming these variables in React, you always have to start with the React app. And then I'm going to save this, and then once I save this, then you can see it is already grayed out. That's because in my gitignore, I already have .env added here inside here. So if I were to remove this from here, you'd see that it is no longer grayed out, which means that you can commit this to GitHub. And remember that committing your access keys and API keys to GitHub is never a good idea. So remember to always add them inside an environment variable, and then you can add them inside the get ignore so that they're going to be ignored and you don't accidentally leak sensitive information. So once you have that, then you can go into get images. And one thing that I should mention, by the way, is that every time that you change environment variables, you have to restart your server. Okay, so we can actually just shut this down because we're going to restart it anyways. So inside the get images, what I want to do is right on top of this, I want to import the use state and use effect hooks. So I'm going to say import use state and use effect. And these two hooks are going to help us to fetch our data. So I'm going to set up my state values. So I'm going to say const images and set images. This is going to be equal to use state, and by default is going to be an empty array because we're going to populate it when we fetch our data. And then below this, we're going to set up our effect function. So use effect. This is going to be equal to const fetch images, which is going to be an asynchronous function to fetch our images, where we're going to say const response is equal to await, and then we're going to be fetching something from the URL inside here, which is going to be very interesting. And then once this fetch runs, then we want to get back some data, which we're going to set equal to response.json. So it's going to convert the request into JSON, and then we're just going to say set images into data. So set the images inside here into the data that we get back, which is then going to populate our state value. Remember, this is the function that controls how we access the state value. So below this, let's remember to fetch our images, to call the function like so. And then I'm going to add an empty dependency array here, which means that this use effect, so the function inside this use effect, is only going to run once, and it's only going to run on the initial render of the app component so that it doesn't create an infinite loop. So once all of this runs, then I just want to get images.length. So images.length, which is going to return the number of images that we have once all of this runs. So let's get our get request inside here. So you can go ahead and just copy all of this. Just copy this link, and then we can paste it inside backticks. Okay, and then we're going to remove this because we want to access our API key from the .env file right here, right? So inside our get images, I'm going to place in my $ and my curly brackets, and I'm going to say process .env. It's called react underscore app underscore unsplash underscore API underscore key. There we go. So I'm going to save this, and then now once I save this, now we can spin up our dev server once again by saying npm start. And if this is working as we expect it to, and I've just realized that I've made an error somewhere here. So async is equal to this should be like this. There we go. So add these two brackets inside here. So I'm going to save this, and our server should be open right here, and we should see, I think 10 should be it. Is it? This should be working correctly, so we're not getting back anything. Let's just try and console log the data. So console.log the data. Okay, and we can open up F12 to see what is happening. So a promise is pending. So this should be const that is, or this should be await. There we go. So because we're using async await, then it returns a promise, and we should always have await here as the keyword. So let's save this, and we should see 10. There we go. So we have 10 right here, and you can see we have 10 items. So once that is working, then let's go ahead and we can begin to figure out how we're going to return all of this. So the first thing that I want to do is add a loading state. So what I'm going to do is right inside here, I'm going to place my curly brackets, and I'm going to say when there are no images, when no images is true, then I want to return an h1 that says loading ... And then once we get our images, then we're going to be returning a section. Okay, and then inside this section, we're going to have an h1 that says recommended for you. And you know what, let me change this into an h2 because it's not a good idea to have two h1s on the same page. So we're going to have an h1 inside here, and then below this we're going to have a div where we're going to be mapping over our images. So I'm going to say images.map, and then for every image that we get back, We also want to get back the index of the image, which we're going to be using as the unique key. And then inside here, we're going to set an implicit return where we're going to be returning image. Okay. Now this image is a component that we have not created, so we're going to go ahead and create it. And remember that when you're mapping over items in React, then all the items that are returned need to have a unique key, which in this case we're going to be using as the index. So the key here is going to be index. Okay. And if you don't want to use the index, what you can do is you can go into the API, and usually it's going to be the ID that is going to be unique. But remember that it doesn't really have to be the ID, because the key only has to be unique. So you can, if there's something like a blur hash, for example, you can use this as your unique key, or you can use the color as the unique key. And really you just have to take a look at the API to figure out what you want to use as your key inside here. So in this case, you can set it to index, or you can set it to image.id, like so. And then what I want to do is I want to pass in all the remaining properties inside here, right? Because I've accessed image.id here, but I also want to have access to all these remaining properties from the API. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say ... image, which is basically the spread operator that says take all the other properties that are remaining when you map over this and then pass them into this image component. So let's go ahead and create this image component. So right inside the source folder, I'm going to create image.js, like so. And then I'm going to say export default function image. And then inside here, I'm going to return a fragment once again with an h2 that says single image, like so. And then once we have that, then I can remove the index from here because we're no longer using it. And then we need to import this image on top. So I'm going to say import image from ./image. And then when we save this, what we should see on the screen is single image about 10 times. So there we go. So we have single image 10 times. Now we can close this, and then let's begin styling this out. So inside our get images, I'm going to go inside the h2, this h2. I'm going to give this a class name of flex and items dash center and justify dash center, and h just screen, and it should push it to the center. And just to test whether this is working, I'm going to turn this into positive. So when images is true, it's going to show the loading state. So let's save this. Let's see what we have. We should have loading right here. Okay. And then let me make it bigger by saying font bold and text dash 4XL, and then just saying text center, so that it's always going to be centered to the center, like so. And then let's change the color to text slate dash 800. There we go. And then let's go inside our h1 inside here, and I can just copy these classes. And then let's go inside our h1 inside here. Let's turn this back to the negative so that the loading state is going to disappear. And then inside the h1, I'm going to say class name font dash bold text dash 3XL for mobile screens. And then for medium screens, which are tablets, I'm going to say text dash 4XL. And then for large screens, which are beginning from like laptops, then I'm going to say text dash 6XL. And then I'm going to say margin on the top. Let's just say margin on the Y of 10. And then for large screens, margin top of 20. And then for large screens, again, margin bottom of 16. So that now we're going to have recommended for you, like so. And then let's change the text color as well. So text dash slate dash 800. Instead of being extremely black, now we have this. Okay. And then inside this section, because I don't want this to go all the way to the edge, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a class name of padding on the x of 5. And then inside here, I'm going to set this to have a max width of 7XL. And then I'm going to say MX auto, which is going to push it inwards. There we go. And then if you want to test it out on mobile screens, you can just go into F12 and then you can test out. This is how it's going to look on mobile screens, and you can set this into responsive, and you can see how it's going to scale up, as you can see. So now that we have that, let me change this text into capitalized. So I'm just going to go into this H1 and say capitalize, which is going to place capital letters right here for every word. And then now we can go into this single image component, and then we can begin starting it out. And you know what, actually what I've just realized is I don't want this to go very much inwards. So instead of having max with 7XL here, I'm going to have a class from Tailwind called container. Okay, and what container does is it just limits everything, as you can see, just limits everything. So next we're going to go inside this div, and then we're going to transform this div into a grid, so that now on large screens these single images are going to be displayed as 3 items. So inside this div I'm going to give this a class name of grid, and grid columns -1 with a gap of 10 for mobile screens to begin with, and then for medium screens, so for tablets I'm going to say grid columns -2, and then for large screens I'm going to say grid columns -3, like so. Now we should see 1 2 3, there we go. So 10 images. Now we can go inside this image component, and then we can begin starting out our images. So inside here what I'm going to do is I'm going to first get the props, and the props are coming from this. So once we get ... images, the remaining items from our API are passed in as properties, and we can get them as props inside here. So inside here I'm going to be returning an article. This article is going to have a class name of shadow-md, so a medium shadow with a bg of white, with a rounded of 3xl to give it a rounded border, with a padding of 5 inwards, so it's going to push all the content that it has inwards by 20 pixels. And then right inside here, let's go ahead and return our images, and the images are going to be coming from props dot, let's check our API. So the image that we want is the urls.full. So let's go ahead into props.urls.full. And then for the alt, what we're going to do is we're going to get the alt description, which here is null. Let me see if there are items that do have it. So they are none. So instead of returning null here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the user, and then I'm going to return the name of the user if the image fails to load. So inside here, I'm going to say props.user, should be it, user.name. And then now we can save this just to see what we have on the screen, and we should have this. So we're getting the images right here. As you can see, it's taking quite a bit of time to load. So let me add lazy loading to this so that it doesn't take up so much time, or so much bandwidth rather. So I'm going to say loading equals to lazy, and then I'm going to give these images a class name of height-52 on mobile screens, which is going to reduce them massively. There we go, as you can see, so height-52. And then I want them to always take up 100% of the articles that they are in, so these white articles. So I'm going to say width-full, like so, which is going to push them to the end. But then you realize that the images are appearing stretched a bit, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to add a class here called object cover, which is going to display them properly. And then now what I'm going to do is add a class of rounded-3xl on the images, which is going to give them a rounded border. Okay, so let's save this. Let's see what we have on the screen. So you can see now that we added the object cover, now the images are zoomed in a bit, but they're displayed much better. And then now what I want to do is on bigger screens, I want the height of the image to increase. So right here, I'm going to say that for empty screens, I want the height to be 80. Okay, and you can see 80 is about 20 rem. So let's save this. And then now below this image, we're going to have a div. And this div is going to have an image, and this image is going to be the profile image of the user. So inside here, we're going to say props.user.profile_image. I think that's how it's accessed in the API. So let me just confirm. So props.user. Where is it? .profile image. Okay, .profile image, then .large. Let's say .large. .profile image .large, like so. And then for the alt inside here, and in case the image fails to load, then I'm going to say props.user.name. And then we're going to also add lazy loading to this. So loading equals to lazy. And then we're going to give this a class name of width-20 and rounded-full, which is going to give it a rounded border. This is D, not F. So rounded-full. And we should see something on the screen. And there we go. So we have these images with the rounded borders, and I can add a slight box shadow on this by setting a class of shadow here. And then now what I'm going to do is inside this div, I'm going to give this a class name of padding on the top of 5, which is going to push it away from this bigger image. And then now after this image, I'm going to add a UL, and this UL is going to have two list items. The first one is going to be the name of the user. So inside here, we're going to access props.user.name. And then the second one is going to be when the image was uploaded. So we're going to say props dot, let me check. It's going to be props, where is it? Props.created at. So props.created underscore at. But remember, this is a date that is formatted in a way that we can't read it, right? So that's why we have a package called datefns in our package.json, which we installed when we ran npm install. So right at the top, I'm going to import format. So import format from datefns like so, which is going to help us to format this date in a format in a way that we can read it. So let's go ahead into this, and then now instead of just returning this, we're going to cut this out, and we're going to return format, and we're going to format new date. So new date, and then we're going to pass in props.created at, so pass in the date that you want to format, and then after this, we're going to format it in the day of day, month, and then the year. Okay, and then we're going to save this, and we should see something on the screen. So we have the name of the person here, and then we have the date that it was uploaded. So let's go ahead and let's style this out just a bit. And you know what, before we style it out, let me just get the Instagram profile as well as the number of likes. So we're going to go outside of this div. So outside this div, we're going to create another div, and then this div is going to have a UL with two list items, and then this first one is going to say the person's Instagram profile, and then this second one is going to say the number of likes. So let's start with the likes. So props dot, we should see props dot likes right inside here. So props dot likes, and then we're just going to pass in likes, so number of likes, and then this one is going to be the Instagram profile, which is going to come from here, so the Instagram username. So what we're going to do is we're going to access the, sorry, where was it? We're going to access the user dot Instagram username. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass in props dot user dot Instagram underscore username, and I think you don't really have to go into the user because Instagram username exists right here in the social as well. So you can go into props.user.social.Instagram username, and it's still going to be the same thing. Now I want to turn this into a link, okay, because if I save this, what we're going to have on the screen is just text. As you can see right here, we have just text. I want to turn this into a link so that when you click on it, then it's going to take you into the Instagram profile. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this and cut it out, and I'm going to return an anchor tag with the href here, which is going to be curly brackets first and then backticks, and then I'm going to say https go into instagram.com, and then pass in our props.user.Instagram username, and remember to add a $sign before it to mean it is a variable. And then I'm just going to say Instagram, and then now we can save this, and this should turn into clickable links. Okay, as you can see now, it just says Instagram right here. If I click on it, then it's going to go into the Instagram profile, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is now we can begin styling this out. Let me go inside this UL first of all, and what I want to do is give this a class name. Oops. Give this a class name of text-slate-600, and then I'm going to say text small to make them quite a bit small, and then I'm just going to say text-right, which is going to align the text to the right. Okay, so it is aligned to the right, as you can see right here. And then now I want to go inside the div that contains this image and this text and display them side by side. So right around should be this one. So inside this div, I'm going to say display this as a flex and items dash center and justify dash start. And then I'm going to go inside this UL and give this a class name of margin on the left of 3, so that this text pushes a bit away from the image. And then I'm going to go inside the first list item and give this a class name of font dash bold and text dash large and text dash slate dash 800. And then I'm going to say margin bottom of 1, just so that it pushes just a bit away from this text. And then let's go inside the date inside here, give this a class name of text-slate-600 and text-small. So let's save this. Let's see what we have on the screen. So we have this on the screen, and you know what, let me not say text slide, let me just remove this from here. And then now what I want to do is I want this div and this div to be a flex box, right? So I'm going to display them as flex. So let's go ahead into, should be, this div is here, and then the second div is this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these two divs, place them inside an article, and then this article is going to have a class of flex. I'm using emmet in React, so that's why I can do this. So flex, and then items dash center and justify dash between, which should take them to the end. So paste this in and save this. And if you want to use emmet in React, what you can do is you can go into your settings.json file right here, and then you can add these lines inside here, which is going to allow you to use emmet in React. So let's see what we have on the screen. Okay, and this is what we have on the screen. So they are now displayed side by side. Let's also add a flex wrap here, so that in case the space is too small, then it's automatically going to go into the next line instead of creating a horizontal scroll bar. So now what I want to do is I want to add an underline on this link to mean it is clickable. So right on this href, so right after this, I'm going to give this a class name of underline. Okay, and there you go. So we have a very simple image gallery application using the Unsplash API and built in ReactJs and style using TailwindCSS. So there we go. That is going to be the end of the video, and I hope you learned something new. So please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.